everybody, it's Deborah Morgan with Kids Health Revolution, and welcome back to the Kids Health Revolution kitchen, where we are cooking up a revolution in our kids' health, right? And the kitchen is the headquarters for our revolution for improving our children's health. This is where it all goes down, where we prepare the kind of goodness that's going to get our kids the nutrition and the gut healing that they need in order for their health to start to improve. So today is episode number 3 of our school snack series, and this is all about reinventing, rethinking, reimagining that lunch kit so that we can pack it full of stuff that we know our kids are going to like and they're going to eat, but we also know is going to do the work of supporting their bodies, supporting their guts, building up that microbiome, and helping us achieve our goals of improving their health. So today is a really nice recipe for a lemon blueberry muffin, and I love this recipe because kids tend to like muffins, right? Muffins are kind of a go-to food for lots of kids, but they have a lot of those processed ingredients that we're usually trying to avoid when we're working on our kids' health. So the processed sugars, the refined flours, if you're buying them at the grocery store, oftentimes it comes with a bunch of preservatives. That's why they last for weeks and weeks without going bad. And so we want to get rid of all of that stuff, but still preserve the taste so our kids are going to like it. So this recipe is great for that. It's got really nice sweetness to it, especially if you have a kid that's just starting this journey into whole foods. So this is a little sweeter than some of my other recipes. If you've been on this journey for a while, you may find that you can cut back a little bit on the sweetener, and it'll work just fine for you. So this is a delicious muffin you can pack into their lunches, and it's got tons of great nutrition in it. It's grain-free, gluten-free, dairy-free. If you are on the GAPS diet, I'm going to give you a couple of options to switch things out as we go along, because some of the flours in here are not 100% GAPS compliant. So pay attention for those little tips. And of course, those will be in the written out recipe that you can download off of the Kids Health Revolution private Facebook page later in the day. So if you are not part of our private page just yet, pop on over to that. It's Kids Health Revolution private page, private group. And every time after our little school snack series, I make sure that I post the recipe there so you can download it and keep it in your files for easy reference. So if you have questions as you're watching, please post them. I will do my best to try and see them. I've got 2 different glasses, reading glasses. You know, it's getting to be that time in my life, reading glasses and distance glasses, and you guys are just far enough away from me when I'm videoing myself that I can't quite see all your comments all the time. But if I do see them come up and I can answer it on the fly, I'm so happy to do that. And if not, and if you're just tuning into the replay and you have a question about something I'm doing, post it in the comments below. I'm happy to scroll through those comments and help out with questions. Okay, so let's jump in. Lemon blueberry muffins. So we're going to start with our food processor, and I see that we can't quite see this on camera, so let me just shift a couple things around and get it closer for you. All right, good. And I actually have my printed out recipe today because I find this recipe I need to pay a little bit more attention so I remember I'm doing things in the right order. We're doing about 1/4 cup of ghee, and I just happen to know what that looks like, so I'm just going to spoon it in myself, but you can certainly feel free to measure it out. Now this ghee is quite soft because I just got it out of the cupboard. You could get it out of the fridge and put it in here, it would be fine. We're going to cream it together with the sugar first, so that'll help to break it down if it's a little hard. Now, let's talk about the sweetener in this. This is date sugar. Okay, it is just ground up dates. That's all it is. So this is absolutely GAPS approved. It's gut healthy because it's digested high up in the intestine, doesn't have a chance to make it lower down and start feeding those bad bacteria if there happens to be dysbiosis. The other beautiful thing about dates is they're full of amazing minerals, so they've got nutrient density, and they happen to be low glycemic. So we know that having a high blood sugar level, so when we eat foods that are high glycemic index, that increases our blood sugar level. And we know that having this high blood sugar level tends to contribute to inflammation in the body. So we want to try and make foods for our kids that are going to keep that blood sugar in control. So if we feed them a regular grocery store muffin, which are usually a lot more like cupcakes when it comes to the sugar content, you're going to see a big spike in their blood sugar and then this drop. And that's contributing to that inflammatory process that we know is related to all chronic health conditions. So a date, for example, is only, I think it's a 55 on the glycemic index, which is quite low actually for a sweet. Table sugar is 60, I believe. So it's under that, and it comes with all the good nutrition and a little bit of fiber in there as well. So that's why I've used the date sugar in this recipe. If you are using coconut sugars or any of those, you could use that as well. But I really like the date because it's got a nice sort of dark flavor to it. It is very powdery. You can see that powder kind of floating up. What did I say I have in here? I think I have a whole cup of this in here. I do. So that's a quarter. And I just want to show it to you as well. Now, like I said, this recipe is a little bit sweeter than I would. So you can see it's just nice brown, fine, dehydrated dates. So if I were making this just for my family, I would probably go with about a half a cup of the date sugar. But because we're trying to sweeten this up a little bit for the little kiddos who are just making the transition, you can go with a full cup for now. It'll give it that nice sweetness. Still be a little less sweet maybe than the store-bought brands, but it's going to give you enough of that flavor so that your kids will accept it, and then you can start cutting back as they are getting more and more used to the whole foods life. Okay, so we're going to put that on and mix it up with the ghee, and we're going to get a lot of powder in a second here so it gets wet. Okay, so we just have some sort of now wet granulated sugar with the nice healthy fat of the ghee. Ghee is very high in uric acid, which is excellent for our intestinal cells. They love that stuff. They get their energy most easily from it. So that's why it's really good for gut health. Now I wanted to talk about these zucchinis. That's why I didn't cut them up first. In the recipe, it calls for 2 medium zucchinis, which is sort of a relative term, right? So I wanted to show you what I mean by a medium zucchini. So not the big honkin' ones, but these little guys. And I put them in peel and all because a lot of the great nutrition of a zucchini is, guess where? In the peel. So we want to throw it in. You're not even going to know it's there. Your kids won't know it's there. You won't be able to see it or anything. So these are just going to go in, and I like to cut them just into sort of big chunks because then I find I get a more even blend with the chunks of zucchini in there. You could also do this in a Vitamix. And then we're throwing in a banana. This helps increase the sweetness. It also helps with the binding of the recipe, and it adds great potassium in there as well. So you want a fairly ripe banana. You can see this one's getting a little brown. And the beauty of it is you can get fair trade organic bananas. If you get the baking bananas in the store that are starting to go brown a little bit, they're a little bit cheaper. So that's always nice. You can save a little bit of money. Okay, that can go in. And I want to make sure that's all I've got for the moment that needs to go in. Yeah, well, let's throw the vanilla in. So vanilla, usually I would really like to use the vanilla powder, which has got an amazing flavor, and it's more the whole food form. But that's getting super expensive because apparently vanilla is becoming rare, or it's just the last crop of it was difficult. I'm not sure what's going on, but I know I've been hearing even for ice cream producers, getting good quality vanilla has been an issue. So get a good quality vanilla extract. And this one I love. It happens to be from a small town around Mexico that I go to with my family. It's organic. It's so beautiful and intense. If you can't get this because you don't go to Comala, Mexico, you can certainly go to your organic food store and get yourself a really good organic vanilla extract. Now, if you are GAPS, intro or full diet, you would not be using vanilla extract because the alcohol in it in those introductory stages can be difficult for some of the gut bugs. So you would just leave this one out, that's fine. So we're gonna put in, let me make sure I'm not lying to you about the amount here, half a teaspoon. And I always get too much, but I like vanilla, so it won't hurt if you get a little bit of extra in there. Okay, so that's the vanilla extract. And we're gonna just spin that and get it to incorporate. You'll notice that I'm pulsing my food processor, and I find that when I have chunks of things in there, that pulsing it helps to just keep it all sort of sliding down into the blade. And then once it's into smaller chunks, I'll let it just run. So what we're looking for here in terms of texture is a fairly fine grate on the zucchini, so small little pieces in there. And eventually it's going to end up in a complete puree, so you won't notice the zucchinis in there at all. Okay, so there you have it. Nice, smooth puree. Can't even tell there's any vegetables in there, which is a bonus. And then we're gonna add in our lemon zest and our eggs. Where's my zester? Here it is. So I've got actually a grater here. I would prefer to be using a microplane, so it's smaller little holes. It gets a finer texture on this, but I lost it. I can't find it anywhere. So this one works, and I kind of like to get a little bit of a chunk of lemon in there. I think it's just a nice flavor. But if you think your kid will be a little bit picky about that, then you'll want to just use that microplane so you can get a really fine grate on it. And we just go along and we sort of grate the whole lemon in there. I love the flavor of lemon and vanilla and blueberry together. It's a beautiful combination. Stick with me here. We're just going to finish this up. I was going to do this beforehand for you, but boy, I'll tell you, it's one hectic day around here in the Kids Health Revolution household. I'm helping out with a fundraiser for my son's soccer team, and it is taking a bit more of my time than I anticipated it was going to. So I'm just going to add a little squeeze of this lemon. Not a lot, probably about a tablespoon of the liquid from the lemon. And again, if you think your kids aren't going to be really crazy about the lemon flavor, you could always leave this out. It's not essential to the recipe. Okay, in that goes. And we are going to now add our eggs. So we have quite a few eggs in this recipe because that helps it to be a little bit lighter and fluffier when we're cooking with some of these alternative flours, especially coconut flour, which I'm using in this because we're trying to keep it nut-free. They can be quite dense. And my little kiddo doesn't mind the dense ones. He quite likes them, but he's used to this. So if your child is more used to the processed food version, then the more, the closer to that texture we can get, the better to start. So we're going with 5 eggs into this, and pasture-raised eggs are best because they're going to have more nutrient density. And so you want to look for those in the grocery store that it actually says that they run free on the range or on the pasture. And it's not about the omegas because they can still be brought up in the big warehouses and be pumped full of omega fatty acids from flax. What we really want is to make sure that they're out in the pasture. And I don't know if you can see, I'll show you in a second here, that these yolks are really quite nice and yellow, even though these hens have not been out, I don't know if that's going to be dangerous, have not been force-fed flax, basically, to get them to orange up. So we still have lots of great omega fatty acids in there without having to do that. I just did a really great podcast interview. It'll be coming, it is actually up on the website, with a local farmer from Cohen Farms, and they produce eggs that have been tested, and it's shown that they have as much omega fatty acids in them, the omega-3 ratios of fatty acids, that it's similar to eating salmon. So if you get good eggs, it's a super duper healthy food. All right, so we're going to give that a little bit of a pulse to combine it. We don't want to do too much because we don't want to break up those little bits of lemon too much. We just want to incorporate the eggs. I'm just going to give the sides one little scrape. And one more time. All right, fantastic. So that is our wet ingredients, okay? Fairly liquidy, okay? Nice, thick, it's got a great aroma to it. You can smell the date sugar, a little bit of the banana in there. It's just smelling really good already. All right, so let's move on to the dry stuff here. Get some of this stuff out of my way. So I did pre-measure out the flours, just so you don't have to sit here and watch me fuss around with the bags. And so what I have in this big bowl here, my big beautiful white bowl, you can see there, it doesn't look like a lot of flour, but again, these flours are a bit different than what you might be used to. So we have tapioca, a 1/4 cup of tapioca flour, a 1/4 cup of arrowroot powder, and both of these are tubers rather than grains, so they have quite a lot of starch in them. They are higher in their glycemic index, but we are mixing it in with some fiber here, so it helps to balance that glycemic load. We have non-aluminum baking soda, so we have a 1/2 teaspoon of that in here. And it's important to get non-aluminum baking soda, because when we're working with our kids and improving their health, what we want to do is be decreasing the toxic load, and the commercial baking sodas that you get most places are contaminated with aluminum. So if you can go to the organic or natural food market and pick up a bag of the non-aluminum, that would be best. And then I've added in a 1/4 cup of the coconut flour, and this is super fibrous and it really absorbs a lot of liquid. So it's a little bit different to cook with. Now, we're going to start with this as our dry base. And because the size of your zucchini may vary a little bit, you might have to add in a little bit more. So we're going to see how this goes. And if we have to add in a little bit more coconut flour, we'll do that. We just want to make sure we don't get too much coconut flour in right away, or you'll end up with really tough, sort of dense muffins, and that's not what we're looking for. So let's just make sure I've got everything in there. I'm not missing anybody. Oh yes, sea salt is also in here. So we have a little pinch of my sea salt. You could also use Himalayan rock salt. You want to use a good quality salt so you're getting the actual minerals from it. Okay, we're good. All right. So let's move that out of my way. And we are going to just start mixing our wet into our dry, and then see how we're doing. The other thing that I usually do with these flours, because they do absorb liquid as they sit, so it's important that we incorporate the wet into the dry and then give it a little bit of time to sit before we decide if we need to add a little bit more. Okay, so you can see there that that's looking, like a good batter right there, and I haven't even added in half of my wet ingredients yet, but it will really soak up that liquid and get thicker. So we're gonna add in the rest of this, hoping that my blade doesn't plop out into my bowl like it sometimes does. I'm trying to keep my hands a little cleaner than I do when I do this on my own. And it's pretty much impossible. So let's just dive in there, get all the goodness off the blade. There we go. That's why I keep this around to wipe my hands off. And let's scrape all this yummy, sweet goodness off the sides and into the pan there, or into the bowl. There we go. So let's give that a mix and see where we end up in terms of our consistency. Looking good so far. Now, one other little optional add that you have here, if your child likes the texture of an oatmeal muffin, you can add coconut flakes into it at this point. And so we're going to add that into this one, just so you can see how we would do it if you wanted to give that a try. We add them in and it gives it just a little bit of that, that chew that you would get from having an oatmeal in your muffins. Now, if you're just gluten-free and you can get certified gluten-free oats, you could certainly try and use some oats in this. I've never tried it because we don't do any grains in our home at the moment. So if you do try it, let me know how it turns out. So I would take, the recipe calls for a half a cup, and what I do is I just take them and kind of crush them. So these are organic coconut flakes, and they are unsweetened, just the natural coconut, that's what you want. And I kind of just give it a little crunch into my hand, and I wouldn't normally measure this out, but I'm going to just to show you that sometimes I measure when I'm making my recipes. Okay, and that just kind of breaks it up into those little flakes that are going to imitate the size of a oatmeal grain. Okay, so we've got half a cup there, and we'll just sprinkle them in at this point and then mix them into the batter. And you can see it's quite surprising how much liquid those flours have absorbed, because we added in all that extra liquid, and it's still a really good sort of batter consistency. It's not too dry, right? So that's why we don't want to start with adding too much of the dry. So if you're finding that this is still quite liquidy, like it's runny, it's not a nice batter like this kind of consistency, then you'll want to sprinkle in a little tablespoon at a time of coconut flour. Mix it in, give it a couple minutes to absorb, and then mix in a little bit more if you need it. You shouldn't need too much more if you're, not using crazy sized zucchinis, like those big honkin' ones that sometimes grow in the gardens at the end of the year. So we've got everything in there except for the blueberries. Now, I use fresh blueberries for this, especially because we're coming up on blueberry season. You can use frozen blueberries, but make sure that they are thawed before you use them, and give them a little drain. Otherwise, you get too much liquid off of them and it interferes with the recipe. So fresh blueberries go in there, about a cup. Now I have washed these, but I put them back in their little clamshell because I wanted to show you that this is exactly about the amount that you want to have. That's about a cup, maybe a tiny little bit more if you're lucky in the package you get at the store. These are organic blueberries because berries are one of the higher fruits for pesticide residues on the Dirty Dozen. So berries are something that I always make sure that I buy organic. Beautiful thing if you happen to be in the Alberta area is we are very soon coming up on Saskatoon berry season, and Saskatoon berries would taste fabulous in this. And the amazing thing about that is lots of us have them in our backyards, but we can also wild forage Saskatoon berries all over the place. So we could add some beautiful berryness into this, organic, wild grown, without even having to buy it. So always thinking about how we can add nutrient density. Nutrient density, the more local it is, the more nutrients you're going to get from it. And doesn't hurt to change up the flavors sometime either, right? Okay, so I've just added those into the batter. It's important they go in at the very end and just get sort of folded into the batter so that we don't squish them too much, and then we still get that plump, juicy blueberry bite when we bite into our muffins. Okay, and the coconut flakes that are in there, as they've been sitting, are going to soften a little bit so that they take on even more of that oatmeal-y sort of texture. And that's all there is to the actual recipe itself. And then in order to cook them, we have the oven at 325. We cook these a little bit lower because they do need a little time to cook through in the center because of the fibrousness of the coconut flour. So we are going to put them in a cookie sheet. This happens to be a jumbo cookie sheet because that's all I had for my liners. I like to use liners with these because I just find I struggle with it sticking otherwise in these deeper cups. So line them with your parchment, or if you want to get cute little ones, you can do that too. Oven's at 325, and then we're just going to scoop, and you want to try and get, you know, a few blueberries in each scoop, and giving it a little bit of a mix in between scoops will help you to, you know, make sure that they haven't all sunk to the bottom and you get no blueberries in a couple muffins and all the blueberries at the end. So I'm basically doing, you know, just a heaping wooden spoonful, or you could do a couple tablespoons full, however you want to do it. You just want to not fill the cups up all the way because they are going to rise a little bit. And because of these flours, you don't want to make them too huge in the cup or they won't cook all the way through. One more here. So this recipe, I don't have all the cups. I'm not going to make you sit here while I spoon each individual one out. But this recipe will make a dozen of these jumbo size. They'll probably make 2 dozen of the regular size muffin. And you can also put this into a loaf pan. You just wouldn't fill it up all the way. Let me see if my loaf pan is in here. Banging dishes here. So just your basic loaf pan, you would line this with parchment paper again. Again, another important reason to line it is these are aluminum and we want to protect ourselves a bit from the aluminum, so the parchment helps with that. I would fill it up to about halfway in here, and you can make like a lemon zucchini blueberry loaf as well. All right, so those would go into the oven for 30 to 40 minutes, depending on how, did I just get blueberry muffin mix on my forehead? So depending on how big your muffins are, the longer they're going to take to cook in the center. So if I'm making this size, I'll put them in for 30 minutes, and then sometimes I will just turn my oven off and leave them in for another 5 to 10 minutes so I know that they're really cooking through in the center. So you can certainly do that, but the best trick is just to check them and put a little toothpick in there and make sure that they are coming out clean. Now, before we just finish up, one other thing that you can do with this type of recipe is you can make sort of fun little shapes with it. Now you can't use the parchment in this way, so you are still getting a little bit of exposure to the aluminum, but every now and then if you're doing something special, you can get a pan that has a little shape to it, and you can put your batter into there. You want to make sure you grease it really well with some coconut oil or some grease or avocado oil, and cook them into fun little shapes too. And so sometimes our kiddos like that, and sometimes if you have a picky eater in your home, using something like a fun shape is a good way to get them to try something new if they haven't tried it before, right? Because the kids' food, the processed kids' food, they like to use that tactic, and so why can't we use it at home too, right? So there you go. I didn't see any questions come up as we were cooking along, so hopefully everything was pretty clear on how to make this recipe. Remember that I will be posting the downloadable recipe in the private Facebook group, so Kids Health Revolution private group. You can pop over there and join us. Great place to ask questions, things that you might not want to necessarily post out publicly in the Kids Health Revolution page. We've got some great people in there with lots of knowledge, so it's a good place to be, and you get to get all the recipes from our weekly school snack series, and we'll be coming back to you next week, same time, same place, noon Mountain Standard Time, and I hope to see you then. If you have questions, post them below and I'll answer them. Bye everybody, take good care, have a good rest of your day.